Wimbledon Women's Final. Why Grand Slam Mythology is limiting its greatest matches. The All England Club, London. 20 years ago this week, Venus Williams defeated Lindsay Davenport in one of the most dramatic Wimbledon finals in history. Davenport served for the match in the second set and had a championship point in the third, but Williams won an All-American Classic 4-6, 7-6, 4, 9-7 in 2 hours and 45 minutes. It remains the longest ever Wimbledon women's final and one of the greatest Grand Slam finals of all time. After Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner's epic French Open final last month, tennis conversation turned to that very topic. Some Wimbledon finals made the cut. The 1980 men's version between Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, the 2008 equivalent between Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. Even Goran Ivanišević's win over Patrick Rafter in the tournament's 2001 edition. What if Steffi Graf versus Monica Seles at the 1992 French Open? Or the 2014 French Open final between Maria Sharapova and Simona Halep? Men's Grand Slam finals, which are best-of-5 sets, afford more time and more space in which to unfold into epic dimensions. A sport with legitimate claim to have greater quality than most still has a chasm between its men's and women's events, which are best-of-3 sets, on its biggest stages, at which the format acts as a cap on not just how long a women's match can go, but how deeply it can bury its way into the collective consciousness. Quality does not always equal quantity. As tennis matches generally tend to go on longer, and some five-setters can become dull for long stretches, the best-of-3 version has benefits. That Sinner-Alcaraz final in Paris was the exception rather than the rule. But in wider culture, the myth-making of five-set tennis is the more potent, which can limit the exposure given to women's tennis on a purely quantitative basis. And if women's matches spend less time on television screens than men's matches, especially at the climaxes of the biggest events in sport, then the men's game necessarily receives more exposure. Making both men's and women's singles best-of-3 for the first 4 rounds, and then best-of-5 for the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals at the 4 majors is one solution. Venus Williams had spent the day before that 2005 final in meetings with Wimbledon officials, discussing prize money inequality. That year, the tournament's men's singles champion, Federer, won £630,000, $1.1 million in 2005, while Williams got £600,000, $1.05 million. Her final against Davenport could not have offered a better illustration of why the disparity was so unfair. 2 years later, Wimbledon finally joined the other 3 Grand Slams in awarding equal prize money. Davenport, now 49, remembers that final as one of very few matches in her career in which she played really well but ended up losing. She was the top seed at the tournament and had already won the US Open in 1998, Wimbledon in 1999, and the Australian Open in 2000, but she fell just short that day against Williams, who won her third of 5 Wimbledon titles and finished on 7 majors overall. The backhand winner that she smacked down the line to save Davenport's championship point underlined why she is such a legend of the sport, and the match underlined how the two players, plus contemporaries such as Venus' sister Serena Williams and Jennifer Capriati, had transformed women's tennis with the power and precision of their hitting. It was the toughest loss of my career, Davenport, who is covering this year's Wimbledon as an analyst for Tennis Channel, said in a phone interview this week. Though I spoke about this once with Andy Roddick, a fellow American who lost in the men's final of the London event 3 times, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah, at least you have a Wimbledon title." That it was an incredible match makes it much harder, Davenport said during an interview in Paris last month. "You remember those," she said. "Sometimes it's almost easier to lose badly. Because you're like, man, that wasn't my day. That was my day, and I still couldn't win." That's a little harder to reconcile in your mind. Davenport also has some experience in best-of-5. She played 2 matches in the longer format because the final of the WTA Tour Finals used it between 1984 and 1998. Davenport lost 6-3, 6-2, 6-4 to Gabriela Sabatini in 1994, and 7-5, 6-4, 4-6, 6-2 to Martina Hingis 4 years later, in the last best-of-5 WTA Tour match to date. It was interesting, she said this week. It was very different, and I was outspoken that I didn't think formats should change in the middle of a tournament. It was a little bit hard to manage, and without the day off before, it was a bit complicated.